So I do have a product review to do today. It is the Firewolf compact scope, 3x9x32, and as you are aware, these Firewolf Chinese scopes rival those of $2,000 Nikon scopes. Of course, I'm kidding. This is nowhere near that particular quality. It is an extremely inexpensive scope. It comes in at under $50 on AliExpress. There was a shipping charge. The entire cost for the scope was under $55. It was $54 and change is what it ended up costing me. But the purpose of me ordering it was an inexpensive alternative to the UTG Bug Buster scope. This one, which I had mounted on my Hatsan Carnivore in 35 caliber. I had taken it off of another gun of mine, specifically to mount up here to try out the Mogori 3 night vision system. I needed a scope with an adjustable objective that I could get the Mogori 3 mounted on, and the Bug Buster scope presented me with that. It wasn't mounted the way I would like. The Bug Buster scope has illuminated reticle, and the controls for it are back here on the eye lens itself, which only allowed the unit to fit over the dioptic portion and really wasn't mounted as securely as it should have been. This particular scope, although it has an illuminated reticle, the Firewolf, the control for it is up here over by the windage and elevation controls. It's not back here on the lens itself, which should allow me to mount that Mogori 3 much more securely, much farther onto this lens than it did on the Bug Buster scope. The overall length of the scope is exactly the same as the UTG Bug Buster. It's a very compact scope. 3x9x32, same objective lens size, same magnification capabilities. It does adjust the objective out here on the lens itself. And like I said, it's a very cheap alternative, and I'll get to testing it and see exactly how good of a scope it is. So now I have this Firewolf scope mounted on the Hatsan Carnivore. Quick first impressions of this particular scope. Going side by side and comparing the clarity and the crispness of the picture with the Bug Buster scope, it is not of the quality of the UTG Bug Buster scope. Somewhat of a more foggy picture, just not as clear, and it's noticeable. The other thing that's extremely noticeable is the reticle itself and the style of the reticle. The Bug Buster scope has a very thin wire reticle that takes up a good portion of the target part of the picture. It does have thicker outside lines to the reticle, but a good wide range vertically and horizontally. with more mill dots to it than this particular reticle has. The thick part of the reticle is much longer vertically and horizontally, so that thin portion of the reticle takes up a much smaller area of the target picture than the UTG Bugbuster scope. That's very noticeable. It does have, as I said, the illuminated reticle. Its only choices are red or green, with a choice of 5 brightness settings for each. And it is bright, very bright, even on its lowest setting. The one thing that I'm pleasantly surprised by is the crispness of the clicks. The way that these turrets work are you pull them up or out, depending on, you're adjusting windage or elevation. But the solid, non-sloppy feel and definitely well-defined clicks to the turret system is something, as I said, I'm pretty pleasantly surprised. I expected a kind of a sloppy turning system to the turrets, and it really doesn't seem to be. And also, the rotation to the objective lens focus and the magnification ring, sturdy. I'm trying to think of the right word. Something at this price point, I would expect a lot of looseness to the fitting. Probably some pretty open tolerancing involved with the making of the different parts and putting it together. And there is definite sturdiness, a good amount of resistance, not overly difficult to turn, but yet, as I said, an amount of resistance to the movable, focusing, adjustable objective and the magnification ring that I would expect on a higher price scope, quite honestly. So there's definitely gives and takes, and some things I am pleasantly surprised by, and things I would expect from a scope that comes in. Its base price, as I said, was under $50. The only way I could get the Magori 3 mounted onto this, number one, it does fit much farther, as was the whole point of this particular scope. Mount much farther onto the back eye tube of the scope. But the diameter of that tube, definitely the dioptic ring on my Bugbuster, which is really what this was clamping down on, was a larger diameter than this particular tube. None of the compression rings that you have a choice of tighten down the unit onto the scope tube itself. None of those compression rings were small enough to give a tight fit with the Magori unit. So what I had to do, I used some camo tape and built up the diameter around the scope tube to the point where one of the compression rings would fit snugly. Now, that seems to be the norm. if you go through other makes of the similar type add-on night vision systems, they include a roll of tape with the unit specifically for this purpose. Quite honestly, I had thought when I originally purchased this that in the description of the Magori 3, I thought it came with, but going back through the box, it didn't. But I have plenty of this style camo wrap, so that's what I used. And it does, you know, with the proper buildup of it, give a secure, tight fit of the night vision system. And as far as the type of picture that it gives and the clarity of the scope, I will now get into that. What I'm trying to show here is the lights off in my basement, not completely off. There is a side light on. This is a view through the scope and the night vision system on its lowest green setting, which is still, as I said, very bright. This is with the illuminated reticle off. This is on the highest red setting, which is really, really bright. Back to off and back to the lowest green setting. And clarity of picture with it off. Everything up, would I recommend the Firewolf scope? Well, it would take some very specific conditions for me to recommend it. If you absolutely only have a budget of $50 max to spend on a scope, and you really need or want an adjustable objective, the scope will get the job done. What I would highly recommend is saving up another $50, waiting, and get yourself a UTG Bug Buster scope. The quality of that scope and the clarity of the picture is just way above what you get with this particular unit. Just hoping that it would be a copy close to the scale in clarity that you get with the UTG. It really isn't. And as far as maintaining a budget, the scope I originally had on here, this is a 3x9x40 objective scope that I bought at a local outdoor gear store. I believe I paid under $30 for this. The picture on this is clearer than that. Now, this has its drawbacks. It does not have an adjustable objective. And of course, the larger objective lens on this is going to contribute to a sharper picture. So you might want to go that route. But again, $50 is absolutely the max you're willing to spend on a scope, and you'd like an adjustable objective. That will get the job done. But overall, I would say no, I would not recommend it. I would, again, recommend just waiting a little bit longer, getting yourself another $50 and get yourself a nice, really good budget scope like a UTG Bug Buster, which, as I said, they do have a UTG Bug Buster scope with the illuminated reticle and only red or green option with the controls on the middle side of the scope, which would lend itself much better to adding a Magori 3 night vision system. I look forward to the opportunity of trying out this setup. Overall, the cost of the scope and the night vision system comes in at well under $200 for the two combined. And whether or not they will get the job done, I really would love the opportunity to find out. And if that opportunity presents itself, you most certainly will see a video on that. So again, thanks for checking this one out, guys. Till the next one, stay safe and shoot straight.